Welcome back. It is another episode of the Elevation Association Experience podcast. We're your hosts, Dr. Jared here. You're Dr. Jared here. Dr. Jared Hill, and Dr. Dan Nelson. Other than the fact that I can't talk this morning, which is par for the course, I think we need to start off with something that I meant to start off with the other day, Jared, and I totally forgot. And that's the fact that your brother was here in the office a little while ago, and he called you little guy. I think that we should probably address that. He was
Yeah,
just a little guy.
there are a handful of people in this world who can call me little guy. And my older brother is one of those. One of my older brothers. I'm bigger than one of my older brothers. The other one is bigger than me. So yeah, it's a fun thing now in the office that we like to do. And I've been called worse. So be called little guy is not a bad gig. So
Hey, for those of us that were raised in Hobbiton, this is a big deal. All right. So it's go ahead and let this ride for a while. So if you see Jared, make sure to say, "Hey, little guy, how you
he's a little
doing?"
guy. No, I'm excited about the podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about being a solopreneur, some of the struggles and how to overcome some of the struggles of being a solo entrepreneur and business owner. We're going to talk about the weight that really nobody sees. The all the struggles we and this is spurred by a conversation that we actually had with a dentist last week. A single practitioner who has been practicing for 10 years or so and is really just feeling a lot of the struggles, a lot of the isolation, and is looking for answers. And so we're going to talk about that today, and excited to dive deep into that, Dan.
Yeah, I want to tease a little bit, Jared. I want you to tease, maybe introduce this whole. We'll get into the conversation we had. We've had this conversation a couple times with a couple docs, similar to this one that Jared's alluding to. But I kind of want to tease. We're going to do another podcast that I think it's important. And Jared and I were talking before we started recording, and I want you to tease that a little bit about, because I think the premise needs to be set that you talk about the American dream, right? The American dream, especially as it was framed back in the day, back in the 1800s, was to, open your own shop, be your own business owner, pull up yourself by your bootstraps and find success. And one of the best things about our country is that there's still the ability to do that. And I think that the dream for many of us is to be to be that, solopreneur, or what does Mark Costas call it? He's got a name for it too.
Dentalpreneur. Is that what he said?
Dentalpreneur. Yeah, that's right. Um, and I think that it's important that we address that there is a difference between going to work for somebody else, going and plugging yourself as a cog into the corporate mill versus being your own person, being your own woman, being your own man. And you have that drive and that desire to go and own your own practice and to find success down that route. So kind of just tease that a little bit for us, Jared, about, what the book you've been reading and that some of the thoughts you've been having on that.
Yeah, this is an upcoming podcast. Maybe it's the next one we do. I don't know. We've got a couple in the hopper, but this is the whole concept of understanding and acknowledging that there are a lot of benefits to working with a corporate entity. You have a corporation which provides systems, it provides accountability, it takes a hard look at numbers, data, information, analysis. You make decisions based upon all that. There's also a dark side of working with corporate. You lose creativity, you lose all sorts of other things that are associated with that, and your hands are tied in handcuffs. So where is the balance between working with corporate or gleaning the good aspects of a corporate, yet maintaining solo entrepreneurship in your practice and the benefits that go along with that? So there's always like this push and this pull between those two entities. And where do you find the harmony between those two entities? The book I'm reading is awesome. I recommend it to everybody. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. Can't remember who the author is right now, but he does a great job of talking about this specifically within the restaurant business, but it correlates 100% over to our business and dentistry as well. So, if you have a copy of that, get a copy, listen to an audiobook. It's a great concepts for a solo practitioner who is trying to be more efficient, have all the systems they need, and all that sort of thing, but at the same time maintain their autonomy, maintain their creativity, maintain their personality within their practice without having this corporate stamp on it. And so, we'll get into that a little bit, and that's part of the struggle that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think I love that idea, and really, to me, there's still more benefits of being in private practice by far. That I've got Siri jumping in trying to talk to us now. This is what happens when all my devices listen to us. Um, yeah, I think that there's still some tough parts though about, and I can see why it can be a deterrent to own your own practice, right? Like there is a quiet burden that we carry as especially as solo practitioners, right? So because you're not just running the practice, you have to carry the load of all the pressure that comes with being a business owner and a solo practitioner. You don't always get that sounding board of people you can talk to, just someone to bounce ideas off of, or even to commiserate over. Right? You're the one that has to call the shots. You take all the risk, and you don't really have an outlet. A lot of stuff is dumped on you, and you don't really have an outlet to go and dump that off somewhere else, or to share the burden. And so there's a lot that you have to carry burden wise as a solo practitioner. That's a rough road to hoe. It's not easy. And I can see why people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and, run to this corporate gig or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely the dark side, right, of solo ownership, of entrepreneurship. All those things that you just talked about, and those all those things lead. It's almost a trap. It's almost like you have this. So I'm a this entrepreneur, this dentalpreneur. It's identity now that I've taken upon myself. It's almost a trap because that independence that you're trying to achieve, that leads to isolation, and then this strength of I can do this by myself, I can run this practice, that then becomes silence eventually. Your leadership, I mean, it becomes lonely as you're talking about because you're carrying all the pressure, you're making all the calls, you're absorbing all the risks. It all of a sudden you feel lonely. And then that control that you're having, all of a sudden it turns into compression. You feel this compressed anxiety that's just building up inside of you. You can't let go or release, and that's when it leads to burnout. There's a cost to that. You know
Totally.
that
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Keep thinking. I like where you're going with this, Jared. I interrupted you. Keep rolling, man.
No, it's guys gonna say there's a cost to that, right? There's a cost to all of those things, and that cost is what we call burnout. It's masked, as dedication and fortitude, whatever it is, but it's burnout. You end up with fatigue, decision fatigue. Your clarity all of a sudden gets muddled. It gets decreased because now you're caught into all the minutia and all the things of running the practice. And at some point in time, the toll that it's going to take on you is this emotional distancing. You have to distance yourself emotionally from it. And when that happens, your leadership then becomes really kind of more of a reactive rather than proactive. All of a sudden, you get caught in a moment of weakness in a 5-minute break that you have maybe between, the root canal or the extraction with the broken root tip, and all of a sudden your leadership becomes reactive, and that's when you start to spiral downward, and that's when people start to come to us or to other people and say, hey, I'm about had it. I need some help.
Yeah, I loved the presentation you did at the Dentist Money Summit this last year. I thought that was really powerful, and I think it hit home with a lot of people. Just talking about your own journey through burnout and finding a footing again. And but yeah, these things. This is what happens when you try to carry too much of a load too long by yourself, right? I've talked to it when you're new. you're just so busy trying to sort it all out. And burnout doesn't really, it's not even in the radar, right? It's not, you don't see it on the radar anywhere. It's not something that you've even thought about. But as we get comfortable in more, especially clinically, um, now those decisions don't weigh as much. And really it becomes the running the practice stuff that burns people out. Usually it's not clinically. For me, I'm very fulfilled clinically, but it's we've done surveys and we say, well, what's the number one challenge of being a practice owner? And it always comes back is dealing with people, right? And having to have those interpersonal relationships that are so demanding and so taxing that will wear somebody out. And if you don't mark it and go, this can be a potential problem down the line, or maybe it's a problem right now, that can turn into burnout real quick. And what's interesting about this is I think what solo docs and what all of us really are probably really craving is a safe processing space. Think about that for a second. You know, is your clinic, is your office a safe processing space? Can you actually work through stuff, talk to somebody, bounce ideas off of them, and work through the challenges, problems, difficulties of everyday running a practice in a safe space? And, you have to think about, okay, well, what is a safe space? Is it somewhere that you feel like you have someone that is rowing in the same direction you are, that can commiserate with you, that can understand where you're coming from? Most people don't. Most solo practitioners don't. I think what we're also craving is real understanding. Like I said, someone that commiserate, someone that is one of the things that I think we bump into more often than not, is that we as dentists are a peculiar breed. I always compare it to being a fighter pilot, because of my time in the Air Force, and I love that fighter pilots have had that system set up for their emotional and psychological support that they've had for years. And we don't have anything like that. We're not even expected to. People look at us and say, "Oh, you guys print money and you drive your expensive cars and you have your boats and they just see all this outward monetary success that dentists historically have had, and so there's no like, well, what do you guys need? You don't need anything." And so for us to be able to commiserate and have someone that really understands this is huge. And that comes through, having honest, pure conversations, having someone that shares our perspective. But that can be difficult too, because sometimes, we're bred to be competitive from the moment we hit undergrad. We're bred to be competitive. And that competitive nature goes all the way through dental school. I mean, we joked about it on the show before, right, Jared? Like the people, especially the ones that were shooting for to be specialists, man, they weren't. Some of them didn't want to help you at all in dental school, or in undergrad for that matter. Because it was too bad, because that bleeds into, too often it bleeds into when we're now in practice, and you have this still competitive nature because that's what we're bred to do. And then you want to compete with the doc down the road or whatever. And so, yeah, it can be kind of cutthroat. I was actually talking to a rep yesterday, one of the supply reps, and he was telling me how cutthroat it's getting in places, urban areas, and just how dentists are feeling the pressure because of increased overhead, because of rising, decreased reimbursements by insurance companies, all this crap that's going on right now. And they're feeling more and more pressure. So they're actually turning away from their peers, and it's getting more and more cutthroat. So I think we're craving these things, like I said, a safe processing space, having someone that can commiserate and understand us, and someone that can share this perspective without feeling like we're competing.
Yeah, totally, Dan. You just verbalized was rarely been verbalized by dentists, right? These are the things
Yeah.
that we crave,
Nobody talks about that.
but we're afraid to say it, right? We're like, oh, I don't want to sound, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy that's like, yeah, I need a safe processing space, right? I don't even like those are the things that we need, but rarely say those things. So, as we talk about these things and go over these things of what a dentist really needs, but they're scared to talk about. There's a lot of academic research and there's a lot of literature that studies the highlights and advantages for business owners to participate in groups, networks, or associations. I think that's where this path leads, is because if you continue down this path of this solopreneur and you get stuck into this trap, there has to be a way out of it.
Mhm.
And right now, the way out of it is you could sell, right? You could be done. You could say, I'm getting out of the profession entirely. I know I have a friend who worked for about 10 years and said, I am out. I don't want to take this anymore. Done. Right. That's an option. The other option is for corporate dentistry to come in their big white horse and say, I will save you and I will take all these things off of your plate. Right. That's another option too. Is there a third option? Is there an option of belonging to some sort of group, some sort of network, some sort of association that isn't one of those two options? Absolutely. There are networks and groups and associations out there. It's finding the right one. But there let me go over the benefits of belonging to a group or a network and association. One, you have access to resources and expertise, right? You've got these groups and networks. They facilitate information for sharing access to a wider range of human, social, and financial capital. Okay, so you've got these these opportunities to gather together and to share these resources. Um, like you said before, this perspective without competition, right? You got this ability to problem solve together. You get
Group think.
together. This is my issue. This is your issue. How are we going to do this together? And you have these diverse perspectives coming from different areas. People for practice in bigger practices and smaller practices in different parts of the country, in Arizona and Idaho and California. All these different perspectives coming from different backgrounds. We were all come from different dental schools, right? But you have this diverse perspectives that can lead to then these innovative solutions, these solutions that, you know, when you work for a corporate, and here's what we talked about earlier, Dan. When you work for a corporate has identified the most cost efficient solution. That's great. And you need that. You need to be aware of costs, but all the innovation that you have is taken out of it. Taken out of the solution, all the creativity, all the innovation that you can come up with because somebody's feeding you an answer. Here's the answer. And it is incredibly generic, but it is the most efficient way to do this. And you need to decide whether you want to run that type of practice or not. But being a part of a group, being a part of a network and association, you can come to these innovative answers and these solutions together that can help you, tackle these complex challenges. And you can't get that on your own, or you can't get that with a corporate entity there. So there's a couple benefits to belonging to a group.
Yeah, I think of two things jumped in my mind as you're talking about this, Jared. And the first one is that if anybody thinks that a corporation, their primary concern is A, their employees, or B, the patient, they're dreaming. Like that is the biggest lie that I've heard fed to a potential associate or, to patient. That's, oh my gosh. I watch these ads by these corporate dental offices and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like it's never going to have the personal touch that a solo practitioner or a private practice can offer, right? It won't, because they don't have. If you're working for a corporation, you don't have, and if you work for a corporation and you're happy there, I'm not meaning to throw stones at you at that choice. I'm just saying that because yes, you as the provider can certainly prioritize that patient's well-being, but the corporation itself does not have you as the provider or the patient as their primary concern. They have money as their primary concern, right? Because they are not viable if they don't look at it like, and that might be something that's in their hierarchical, how they rack and stack their priorities, but that doesn't mean that it's the top one, And so if that's important to you, and I think that's why a lot of people do practice on their own, is because they prioritize the patient's health and the patient's well-being more than anything else. Corporate doesn't do that, and like I said, if anybody disagrees with me, shoot me a freaking text. Let's talk, because that is the bottom line. Corporations are set up to make money. They have to often answer to a board, or shareholders. And so, and if they're not making money, they're not happy. That's why, I mean, just look at the DSOs that are collapsing right now. You know, there's a lot of ticked off investors. They don't care that the provider is going to be out of a job. They don't care that the patients are going to be leaving. They care that they are losing their $4 million investment or whatever. So there's that. The second thing that really sparked my thought, Jared, was the fact that the impetus that started Elevation Association. Elevation Association was born from your distress and despair. You know, the fact that the idea came to you at a time where you were feeling burnout, you were feeling alone, you were feeling super isolated in your profession, and you saw this thing going on in a different, you know, industry, that you're like, oh my gosh, these computer guys are getting together and they have somewhere to land. They have a soft spot to fall. They have someone to talk to be able to understand them and to talk about best practices and talk about the difficulties in their industry, and just have someone that can relate. That's where this whole thing was born from, and it's still the underlying current that runs through why we do this, is so that we can create and have for ourselves as practicing dentists people that understand what it's like to be a dentalpreneur or a solopreneur or a, you know, whatever you want to call it. I think that's really important, that people understand, like, why does Elevation Association exist, and that's why we exist.
Yeah, I was that's a great point. I was looking at these other communities, these other peer communities, right? Peer-to-peer communities. And you mentioned that the computer one, because it was from my sister-in-law who's part of a tech company. But what I said, when she would come back from these meetings, she would describe how these peer communities offered, emotional support for each other. Man, they had a facilitator. They had a facilitator, maybe facilitate the discussions, but this wasn't a corporate entity. This wasn't a coach. This wasn't somebody who wasn't in the business, right? There were these facilitated discussions that offered emotional support. They offered validation. Hey, what you're doing is right. Yes, that was one thing that I struggled with quite a bit. Was I don't even know if I'm running this thing right, right? But there's validation. They boosted the owner's confidence of you're doing what you're doing is okay. Keep going down that path, or you're on the right path. Here's some tweaks that maybe we'd recommend, right? What it does is it reduces the psychological burden of being the sole responsible person for the business. And that was what I was looking for, and I couldn't find it in dentistry anywhere. That's one big aspect of a peer group that, in my opinion, didn't exist within our industry, which is why we started this.
Yeah. What's the quote you like to give? A rising tide raises all ships. Rising. Um, yeah, I think that there's that component too. Not just when you have a group like EA, and you have people that are like-minded, working independently towards the same type of things. What we end up seeing is a type of synergy, and this is really cool. And man, I wish I had. I'm just thinking of this off the top of my head. I wish I don't have any metrics to pull, but I can certainly, if anyone's interested, we can get them for anyone that wants to see it. Is that when people come into Elevation Association, they are, and we baseline them, you know, whether it be, and these are off of KPIs, right? Including production, including collection. So actually brass tacks, take home money. What we look at is where they come in, and when they, after 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, where they've come. And as a general rule, is if you join a group like Elevation Association, you're going to see an improvement in all of those KPIs. And yes, of course, we're actively working. We're providing systems. We're providing, you know, help with on the front of that. But also it comes from like, hey, where are you guys buying this? Where are you getting this? What are you doing with this? You know, hey, I had this, you know, where did you guys go for this CE? You know, I'm thinking about doing Botox. Where'd you guys go? How are you integrating that? Oh my gosh, I'm losing money on Botox. How are you guys making money on Botox? You know, things like that, where, you know, it comes from that association from within the group, right? The actual talking and discussions and the collaboration that exists within that. And it really, I mean, it's cliche, but it's super true. You know, a rising tide does raise all ships. So that's a pretty cool effect of being a part of, even though you're independent, you're part of something else that allows you to have all of those important interactions.
Yeah, that another reason I think why people are so successful when they join a group like EA or other groups like that is because there's a certain form of accountability that you didn't have before, right? And so, there's an encouragement of, hey, following through. How are you doing with that project, or how are you doing with that goal? How's that building coming? How can we help? Well, what are some things that we can talk through? Hey, here, let me follow up with that, and that accountability. If you don't have that, stuff goes by the wayside. It's just like in my health journey. Without an accountability person to be like, hey, let's check in, tell me how you're doing. Just a simple act of doing that helps keep me on track, and the same thing is with EA or with any other organization. So when looking for a community, whether it be EA or somebody else, Dan, what are some identifying factors, or some areas somebody should look for when looking for a community to join?
Yeah. How do you know if it's a good fit?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, I think first of all, it's important to understand that not every group is true support, right? Some of them they make a lot of noise, they might be surface level supportive. And some honestly are ego driven. We see that way too often. I get really frustrated. We joke about this all the time, where we call it peacocking. When we go to a CE thing, it could be a clinical CE thing, and we go to it and someone's freaking peacocking. And when that happens, like, the hackles come up for everybody, and nobody wants to now share. Nobody feels like it takes seriously like one person to spoil the entire situation, right? And so because of that, I think it's important to have like-minded individuals, right? I think you have to have so with that comes like, I think, a shared identity and someone that can relate. So if you're like-minded, you can better relate. And I'm not saying like be robots. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying like find people that can understand your situation. Um, find the group of people that live in your reality, not just some generic, you know, business owner, or I see. I'm throwing a lot of rocks today, dude. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. I'm gonna piss. One thing I'm good at is making people mad. But I look at some of these groups and I get really frustrated when I look at them, because they're like, "Oh, we can triple your revenue, blah blah blah," and it's like, yeah, but you would sell your freaking grandmother. Like, you would like. There's no moral compass to some of these people. They have no problems just screwing over anyone and everyone in the sake of chasing a dollar, and that's all they think about is. And they think that that's all we think about is, oh, it's all about the money, 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 money. It's not. Most of the time when we talk to somebody, occasionally there's money issues, but usually it's about harmony, finding work-life harmony. It's about finding fulfillment, having a purpose, especially as people get mid-career or late career. Then they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for my legacy? What am I going to do to perpetuate this good thing that I've built and made? So I think that these are the bigger issues. So when I watch some of these groups, and maybe that's you, maybe you just don't give a flying flip about people or your family or whatever, and you just care about money. And if you do, you suck. And so there's that. But we're not
No.
for people like that. And I think most people are not like that. But there are some that are out there. And unfortunately, there's communities for people like that. But for most of us, I think what we're looking is someone that can find psychological safety, like we were talking about. I think that's another big thing, right? Like, you have to be able to find a group that, now that I've made it completely psychologically unsafe for anybody that's, a money grubber. Um, but I think that people look for psychological safety, where that you can turn vulnerability into a strength rather than a perceived weakness, right? How often is that? Like, if someone comes off, they're like, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable because it shows that I'm weak. That's not true at all, right? Like, if you have the ability to be vulnerable, that that exudes confidence. The fact that you can express your vulnerabilities, right? You can speak about your struggles without like trying to protect your image. You can actually come in. I remember in dental school, we had an endodontist come in and he showed us his failures. I was like, what is this dude? He's, he's blowing my mind a little bit. And he was so confident. And he's like, yeah, guess what? As dentists, we have failures. And it was really profound for me because up until that point, I really truly felt like, oh my gosh, I'm expected to be perfect. By the time, and as a dental student, you're so far from that. And I was like, I'm never going to get there. And so that was a really profound moment for me where this guy showed up, created a immediate space around him for, for psychological safety, and proved that it was healthy to show your vulnerabilities and the fact that we're not perfect, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, and I think that goes back to the first thing that you said is shared identity. People who live in your reality.
Right.
We've talked with so many people who try to help dentists, and but they've never been there. They've never sat in the chair. They've never had, two people waiting in the chair. They've never had the hygienist lingering outside the room, waiting for you to come to do the exam that the patient even doesn't even really need, but they're so set on a system that they're going to interrupt you, and you feel their eyes boring into your back. You've got the office manager who's
Who's also standing behind you, right? You got this like
standing
crowd
behind you
forming.
because you're already feeling in until you have sat in that seat, until you have felt that pressure, knowing that payroll's coming up, you've got an obligation, and you're still wanting to have this incredible experience for the patient. Until you've felt that, there's no way that you can be helping another person through that situation. And I feel like that is, I think that's the first thing you look for in a group, right? Are there people who have lived your reality,
Yeah.
people who have felt what you felt, people who have, struggled where you've struggled? That's where the strength of this is. And then you mentioned it, and the second one you mentioned is right on point too, right? Like the psychological safety. Like you can't go or be part of a group where you feel shamed or where you feel embarrassed because you don't know something. You know,
Yeah.
you may have a brain fart, or you may not know where something is, and you have to be comfortable with people going, yeah, I didn't know what the term, I always say that I didn't even know what the term KPI, key performance I didn't know that. My first 10 years of practice, I didn't know what the term was. Like
Yeah.
that's how you know if you can be in a psychologically safe space or environment, is where people are like, this is a process. Everybody's in a different part of your journey, and you're not in a wrong part. Who
Yeah.
cares if you're 10 years or 15 years into practice? You don't know what that is. Let's start now. Let's help each other out now.
Yeah, and people want something, a group that's supportive, not judgmental, right? So that's really important, and that comes with, it's much easier, obviously, to be vulnerable in a situation where people are supportive rather than judgmental. If someone's judgmental, you immediately, that vulnerability is very difficult to express. But I think so we there's those two things, but I think there's some other things that we need to look at for what someone should look for in a community, and one of the other things is a structured growth plan. I think that they should be able to offer a, um, you don't want a cookie cutter growth plan because not everybody's growth plan is the same, obviously, but there should be a general outline for how to accomplish your growth plan, right? So this individual customized growth plan. There should be some frameworks. We should be able to look at goal setting, how to goal set, how to hit the milestones towards those goals, and something to give you direction for development. And with development comes success, right? So I think that's really important, and I think that there needs to be, trust is a big part of. So we kind of danced around that word a little bit, for okay, well, what do I look for in a community? Well, you obviously have to have a certain level of trust. So you have to have someone that you can trust. The whoever it is that is in the mentorship role or is the guide or whatever, that has to be a trusted source, right? And I think that goes back to this idea of shared identity and psychological safety. Those all tie into that. um yeah, and then I think we've talked a little bit about shame as well, or embarrassment, and that's a real thing in our industry. We're so protective of, like, I talk about the frail dental ego all the time. That frail dental ego is the most tender, soft, squishy, vulnerable component in my entire psyche. And it's something that I protect so much, because when we just are held to this incredibly high level. And I think that that's good. I think we need to be accountable, but also I think that we need to have support, that, like I said, comes without judgment. Someone that, like you said, has been in our shoes and can say, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're going through right there. I'm
Yeah.
slowly getting blinded here. I don't know if you could see that in
Uh,
the video, Jared,
uh,
but
yeah.
the power of seven suns is bearing down on me right now.
I don't know.
For those who can't see
You look
this,
like like you're glowing for a
that's what
second.
it is. Ah, dude, listen closer. I'm getting
For a second
when
there,
I
you
say
almost
something
look like
profound, I glow.
a vampire. You
Well,
know.
I would be melting, right?
Yeah, along with those things, maybe the last couple of things to look for in a group, or those things are important. Is one is consistent connection, right? So you've got
Yeah,
these touch points in whatever consistent means to you, a daily touch point, a monthly, whatever. Just you don't want to be a part of a group that's once a year or
yeah,
every a few months. It's just that's not enough. You need to have some sort of consistent connection. Maybe it's a passive connection, but whatever it is, if it's a feed or some sort of online group, whatever it is, as long as there's some sort of consistent connection, that's important for a group as well.
yeah. And I think that right there is why we have built in, that's been so important to us that we've built in CE events because obviously we want it's not for us. We were like, oh, how can we do this smart? We want to create these social interaction opportunities, but also we want the practice to pay for it. So we throw CE into it. That's one of the reasons that we've done CE with all of our events is so that your practice can pay to go to places like Dominica or to El Salvador or wherever, we're going in that year. So go take a week vacation with your wife on the practice. So pre-tax, right? Like there are some things that we've integrated because these things are that important to us. We want to incentivize so people can come and feel and have that experience.
Yeah, I think that that kind of leads us maybe to my last few thoughts on regarding what they should look for in a group is the community that's built around humans, not just education. So there's study groups. Those are communities or groups that are built around education. Those are great and important, and I encourage you to be a part of those. I'm not saying those are bad. I'm just saying that that is not the answer to the isolation, to the burnout, these struggles as a solopreneur that you're feeling. The answer is actually the community that's built around humans, human interaction, human relations, and you're talking about things outside of clinical. Now, are you discussing clinical stuff? Absolutely, most certainly. But that's not all you discuss. Because as we all know, as you talked about early in the Dan and early in the presentation, is what do most people, most dentists struggle with? It's not the clinical stuff. Clinical, you'll figure it out after a while, and you get into a groove and whatever. It's almost always interpersonal. It's human relations. It's all of those things that burn a person out. So if you're looking for a group, some sort of network association to be a part of, make sure it's built around the community is built around humans, not just the educational part.
Yeah, 100%.
Well,
I think when you find the right group, you're going to find that you have the pressure gets lighter. It's not, and I really don't think that it's like less pressure. Maybe some because now you're starting to integrate, better systems and protocols, and you're learning from each other to kind of how to deal with other people, deal with employees and stuff. But I certainly have seen that the pressure gets lighter. Um, your decision making gets clear. You don't because you have someone to bounce ideas off. You feel a lot better about your decision. You have more confidence in your decisions when you're making something. Because when you're by yourself, you're like, I think this is right, but now you have someone you can actually bounce it off of and they're like, yeah, I did that and it worked great. Or, ooh, don't do that. I had really bad experience with that, so decisions become clear, which breeds confidence. Your confidence will go up. And I think your capacity increases because now you're sharing the load. When you share a load, obviously the weight you can carry increases. So I think there's some some shifts that occur when you go from isolation to intentional support.
yeah. And we what we've done with our group, and I think this is important for a group you look for as well, because we're busy. As dentists, we're busy, we're seeing patients, we run a practice, and we can't take a ton of time away from the practice because we are the producers of the practice, generally speaking, as a broad stroke, right? There's got to be an online presence some sort of consistency where you can get on for 5 minutes. You can read through the feed of inspirational or motivational thoughts or posts or content, whatever it is. There's got to be that rhythm on a daily basis, or maybe twice a week. You're just checking out whatever it is, and that's important for consistency and connection. There also needs to be, though, an in-person aspect of it. So we've created, like Dan said, we've created these opportunities for us to get together, not too often, once a year, twice a year, maybe if you want to. But these provide the depth of the relationship. These provide the actual transformations. These trust bonding experiences. When you go on motorcycle rides and someone has to get life flighted out, those are trust bonding experiences. It's those are experiences that you can't provide any other way. So
Mhm. Yeah, and both are critical, right? I think, yeah, 100%. The One of the things that's interesting about this is I think that people look into it going, "Oh, yeah, I need help," or "I don't need help." They live in there's 2 camps. I need help, I don't need help. And I think that's the wrong mindset when you're looking at something like this. It's not about needing help. It's about building a support systems that, can match the weight of ownership. And yeah, sometimes you're going to pull from that support system, but sometimes you're actually going to feed that and give to that support system. And that's the other part of this is yeah, you'll probably need help at some point, but you're also going to be able to help at multiple points. So, and when you get into a group like that, more often you're helping than needing help. And it's one of my favorite things about Elevation Association is when someone raises their hand and says, guys, I need help with this, you get this flood of support that comes and says, try this, or we tried this, or, look here or look there, or, talk to these people. It's such a cool thing. And it's why we've actually brought other industry experts into the tribe to help to support everyone that's in there. And so I think that there has to be a little bit of a mind shift here that when you are going to join one of these, it's also like, think about what you can contribute to the group. Certainly the group is going to help, but it really is built about being a support system that can help again to build everybody up and raise everybody up. So it's a performance infrastructure, not just a place you go when you need help.
I totally agree. That's the biggest aspect of EA as well. That it ends up being that the people who are, I would say, the strongest leaders, or the maybe the most who have gotten the most out of our group of our association. They're not the people who carry everything alone by themselves. They're not the people who stick to themselves. They're the ones, one, they build the strongest team with them, and two, then they contribute and give back. And there's a satisfaction that fills so many voids by giving back. And in a community where you can help other dentists who are struggling at places where you've been, I mean, that's what a legacy is about as well. You don't have to fly across the country to leave a legacy. You can do it in your backyard. And I look to a couple of my mentors in dentistry, people who I feel like made the biggest impact in my life. And they were the ones who were willing to come in and step in and just give me some advice. And we weren't officially part of a group, but I wish we would have been. I wish we would have been on a more consistent basis, had that mentorship. And that's what I love about our group is we have people who have been practicing for 30 years, people who are retired, and we have people who are just buying their practice for the first time, and everything in between. And we have people, who fill voids for other people in all sorts of aspects. So I love
Yeah.
that aspect.
I guess my parting shot for this episode, Jared, would be that this thought I learned this on I served an LDS mission a lifetime ago. And one of the things that I remember a guy telling me was and this was about going to church, right? And so it was framed in that sense. And he says, you get what you give. And what he meant by that was you're gonna get out what you put into something. And so if you're ambivalent about something, or you just don't care, and you don't put much effort in, you're not going to get much out of it, right? And so I think that that's something to be thinking about as we look at our profession is that we get what we give, right? And so are you belonging to a group that allows you the outlet to give? I think as caretakers, our natural instinct is to give. And so, are you in something that's giving you a healthy outlet, a supportive outlet to contribute and to give back to others, to give back to your profession? Is it giving you an opportunity to go and to serve on a certain level that you want to serve on? See if this is what something that fits. Find that group. Maybe it's EA, maybe it's not, but go and find something that you can belong to. And especially in today's dental climate, as we're seeing such a huge shift towards corporate takeover, let's keep private practices viable. Let's keep this ball rolling. And if you're in a DSO and you're belonging to that, there's a shift there. Let's keep your position viable. Let's keep that moving and do that by finding a good supportive group that you fit into and that you can contribute to. So yeah, you're gonna get what you give.
Yeah, it's often you may be in a spot where you think, "I don't have anything to give." You'd be surprised. You'd be
Yeah,
surprised at what you have. It could be one small idea or thought, but you'd be surprised at what you can give. So, no,
totally.
it's awesome. This is a great episode. If you want to know more about us or about Elevation Association or about our group and what we offer and how we can help with these things, then just go to our website, elevationassociation.com, or reach out to us, or reach out to another member of the Elevation Association and see how they can help. So
Yeah, we've got, check out our online community. We talk about that we have to have an online and a physical presence. And so we do have an online presence. We have it obviously on the website, but we also have a online community on School, SKOOL. For those of you that haven't done school before, it's a specialized kind of closed Facebook group, for lack of better terms. So yeah, come check that out. And it's Elevation Association on School. And yeah, and of course, call us or email us. We'd love to chat with anybody. If you just have questions, concerns, want to know how you can give back, maybe through Dental Legacy Foundation or whatever, let us know.
thanks. See you
All
next
right.
week.
Cheers. Later.